public affairs, politics, opinions, and discussion. This is The Issue on YourTV. I'm Mark Carr. Do you know that there were 10 million electric cars on the world's roads at the end of 2020, and electric registration increased by 41% in 2020? Around 3 million cars were sold globally. Are we ready for this massive change? We'll find out more. But first, my co-host today is the City of Burlington and Region of Halton Councillor for Ward 6, Angelo Bentavania. And Angelo, welcome back to The Issue, and I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce today's special guest.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, Mark, and it's great to be back. And we have an exciting show today, and we have a guest that many of our viewers will be familiar with. So our guest is Kirk Robinson, and he hosts the Auto Experts on YourTV every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. So those that I'm sure that are have watched the show many times. Kirk's the owner and operator of Robinson Automotive, and he's been in that business and operating that since 1988. And I tell you, I've read bios before. This bio reads like a scholar. He has Master of ASE certification. He's factory trained. He's a GM specialist in electronics training, and he's an inspector in clean drive industry. Kirk also, this is a really interesting, he actually has prepared race cars for some pretty high level individuals. I won't get into all of them, but Ron Fellows, Richard Spenard, and Dave Pringham. And those cars, they've won a number of times, in these races. And those that are into the business, it's called the GM Motorsport Series. Just to finish up here, Kirk has also been featured in Money Sense Magazine, the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, Learning Channel, and the Michael Corrin Live. And he also works with many agencies, CAA, the Ministry of Business, the NTO, and to make sure that consumers are satisfied, and he does a lot of consulting for them. So there we go. It's great qualifications for this topic for sure. So go ahead, Mark.
Okay, and just to add to that, Kirk is also a member of Millcroft Against Bad Development, which is still they're still working on the Millcroft end of things. But Kirk, thanks a lot for joining us. Out of the world's top 20 vehicle manufacturers, that represents about 90% of new car registration in 2020. 18 have stated plans to widen their portfolio of models and rapidly scale up production of electric vehicles. Can they do this? And what are the impacts that we're going to feel as consumers?
Well, first off, thanks for the invite, Mark and Angela. Appreciate it. Good to be here. Well, I think they're attempting to scale up, but it's kind of going backwards on them. Volkswagen in Germany had 3 shifts going to produce electric cars. They've now closed. They started with their 3rd shift. Now they've closed their 2nd shift, and people just aren't buying, basically. And so many manufacturers are seeing, a large stockpile of electric cars that consumers just aren't picking up. And there's many reasons for it. Cost is one of them. An electric car is not a cheap car to start with. And, they're actually mostly bought by, wealthy individuals, and it's sort of a novelty of sorts. So, sales aren't going very well for Volkswagen right now. They're actually the most indebted auto repair company in the world right now. I think they're $195 billion in debt. So it's kind of went backwards. So I doubt that we'll even see that 13 billion. I think they promised, Ontario promised them for a plant here. Ford is scaling back on production and building plants. Chrysler is. So it's basically going backwards. The consumers are sort of voting now.
That's an interesting beginning of this conversation, because here I am. I ordered one.
Good for you.
Oh, and told I don't know when. We're talking
Right.
18 months, and I'm thinking, wow, I should have did this 2, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But you're saying I'm waiting because of lack of production, as opposed to people, gearing up and having orders. But what should we be looking for then? I know you mentioned, all these. That's the topic today in the coffee shop, and it's certainly, in my world, in the municipal and regional government, we're being looked at as, hey, what are you doing for the environment? Why aren't you getting electric buses? Why aren't you getting electric vehicles?
Because there aren't any. And again,
There's obviously a disconnect here somewhere.
Right, and that's
in terms of
transportation, global emissions. I think 27% of it is transportation, right? And of that, 16% is cars. Okay, so basically, we're not going to do a lot, even if we all in North America and all over the world, if they actually met their aggressive targets for going electric with automobiles. I think the study was that they would reduce the temperature by, it was like less than 1/1000th of a degree at the end of the decade. Cars aren't really the big issue. You also have to bear in mind where electricity comes from. So, electricity in Quebec will come from hydro. That's pretty clean. You start moving a little further south, and the majority of US electricity comes from natural gas burning. Then the second is coal, you see. And then the thing you have to bear in mind is when they do all this mining to get lithium and cobalt that they need for the electric cars, there's a lot of fossil fuel burnt during that mining process. They're actually, the mining operations are massive. Then you think of the trucks that have to haul all of the minerals to make the batteries. They're on fossil fuels, and we're talking thousands and thousands of very heavy duty trucks. Then you go into the container ships, then you ship it all over. So that's why I often wonder when I'm driving on the 403 in the morning to go to work, and Tesla passes me in the HOV lane because he's allowed to use the HOV lane because apparently he's saving the environment, and my Escalade is just as clean, but I got to stay in the regular lanes. There's a huge lack of understanding of the facts of where this is all going.
well, one of the things that has bothered me about looking into electric vehicles is that if I get one, I can go a specific distance in it, and nobody has got the infrastructure for me to be able to refuel the vehicle. So if I drive down to the U.S., I can't drive down to the U.S.
Yeah. And if you charge it in the winter, you get 30% less distance than you would if you charge it in the summer. So you spend the same amount of money on electricity, but you get 30% less performance because of the batteries are affected by the cold weather, right?
Yeah.
And then if you start towing with these things, like people are learning with the Ford, trucks, they're going nowhere. I mean, some guys are getting as low as 65 to 80 kilometers on a charge because they just can't tow. The other issue is the weight, of these vehicles as well. They're as heavy as a Suburban. Like a Tesla is almost as heavy as a Suburban. Okay, so when you have a truck that's battery powered, it's very heavy already. So you have no towing capacity with it because it's all in the truck.
So,
Angelo, 18 months gives you time. Can you back out of the sale now?
wait a minute. No, I'm still an optimist. Hold on. I've had so many of these conversations over the years.
That's only because you own, the city owns the hydro company, who's going to be supplying the fuel for these vehicles.
Just just to jump in, they've invented a synthetic fuel already. Porsche has, right? Which is carbon neutral. So
So,
you
yeah, so,
you're not going to be hurting the environment by using your internal combustion engine. That's
okay, so
yeah.
should I be changing my order for a hybrid
I think a hybrid is good
or full
value. I really
electric?
do. Yeah, I do.
What's the
Yeah,
future there? I mean,
no, the hybrids will be fine, but what you find, manufacturers are kind of notorious, some manufacturers, by making parts obsolete after 10 years. That because they're no longer required to have parts inventory after 10 years. Companies like Toyota, they seem to be very good about still stocking a lot of parts for their older vehicles. Some of the domestic manufacturers, if you want to try and find a PCM or something, which is a powertrain control module, and it's your Ford is 12 years old, guess what? No luck. So I say that to say when you go into a hybrid vehicle, it's a very complex vehicle. So if you need what we call an inverter or your battery pack later in life, which is maybe around the 15-year mark, best case, you can't even find one. And if you do, like an inverter right now for the Toyotas is $10,000. So, and then you got to go to the scrap yards in California to find it because if you try to order from the manufacturer, it's not available. So I see the electric cars, basically being obsolete in 10 years, from the manufacturer. And then, the goal will be, oh, you just need to trade up to a new car. So where do these things go? And then they're not recyclable, the battery packs. So that's a whole nother thing. They can't, it's not like a lead acid battery where you can recycle, or the internal combustion engine car where you can recycle the car completely, you see. So there's just and then God forbid you get in a car crash with it, they're hard to put out, the fire. And then your insurance is going to be more on an electric car because the repairs are more expensive and more often they're wrote off
How
because
co- why isn't this made public? Why are they always focusing on the investments? Ontario making an investment with Volkswagen, but there's a downside to every upside. Why isn't that being put out there in the community as well?
Well, as we always know, the upper level politicians have a lot of friends in certain industries that they want to promote. That's pretty much it, because synthetic fuel has been around for almost a year now. And like I said, Stellantis, Porsche, and Toyota are on board with it, but you see nothing in the media whatsoever about this, right? Nothing at all. And Toyota, which is the largest, car company and the most successful in the world, hasn't even put out a pure electric car yet. They've been just doing hybrids and then working with, on this fossil fuel, or getting rid of fossil fuel with the carbon neutral synthetic fuel. And then they're also working on hydrogen. So that's where Toyota is headed. So there's going to be options other than electric. I can't see an electric bus working really well because of the weight. You would add so much weight with the battery packs, and that's what they're having trouble with the semi-tractor trailers. The battery is so huge. And then to charge a fleet of electric trucks at a yard takes more electricity than it does to power the entire city.
Are we prepared, even if they could recharge a fleet of vehicles, are we going to run into problems with electricity for heating our homes and turning the lights on because these companies are refueling their vehicles?
Well, it's a false economy right now because, we have a road tax on fuel. When are we going to get it on electricity if we're going to be using it for that, right? And you look at California, I mean, they're constantly saying turn your air conditioners off in the middle of the summer so we don't have brownouts, but yet drive your electric car, right? But charge it at night. And then if you have a catastrophe of sorts like we've had in hurricanes in Florida, everybody lines up on the highway to escape, and they're sitting there for 8 hours, 10 hours. At least in their internal combustion car, they got a chance. Their electric car, they're not going to find anywhere to charge it. When we had that power outage here in Burlington, and the folks down on Lakeshore were out of power for what, 2 weeks or so, or over at least a week, they were going out to their cars to charge their phones. But who's charging your car so you can charge your phone? So it's not super practical. It fits in a niche. There's no doubt about that. So
So, Kirk, you mentioned a couple times Toyota in California, and I did read somewhere, and I can't remember exactly where, that only in California, Toyota has made a vehicle, I'm going to say the name sounded like Maria, my daughter's name. That's how,
Right.
and it's a hydrogen fuel cell,
Yeah.
and it's only sold in California for the reasons that we're talking about for electric. Is the infrastructure is only in California.
Right.
So
Yeah.
now they have a monopoly in that particular state, and people can't go outside of that state if they have that vehicle.
Right. Right.
So,
Exactly.
so is that something that is it entertained out there? Because apparently it is more efficient and it goes much further and is more reliable in terms of mileage. Is that
Yeah.
something that has been discussed?
Yeah, it's just infrastructure, right? So they're using it out there because electric is basically failing out there. They can't charge all the cars. They can't if you can't run your air conditioning on a hot day in the summer and you're having brownouts, you've already exceeded your capacity. So how are you going to add all of this, So yeah, hydrogen makes a lot of sense to test it out there because definitely electric's failing big time. But
Mhm.
if you want a lot of parts for used hybrids and electric cars, that's where you go. California, the junkyards are full of them. So
So just a quick follow-up. So that's why I mentioned your credentials at the beginning of the show. This is very important for the public to know where you've been, what you've done, and your knowledge behind the whole scenes here. So from a uh, repair standpoint, mechanic standpoint, your life, you spent your whole life in this. What happens if I own a Tesla, and something happens? Where do I take it?
well, first of all, we have right to repair in the States, and I think Quebec just voted in right to repair. In Ontario, they don't, but the manufacturers somewhat go by those guidelines. And those guidelines are that, you have a right to have your car repaired wherever you want, or your phone repaired wherever you want. And the manufacturer's obligated to give you the information so that, an aftermarket provider can do it. But what's going on with Tesla is they're very hesitant to release any of that information. They've literally locked people out of their cars while they're in their own driveways because they haven't done a service that was recommended. And then the gentleman wanted to sell his car, but he couldn't sell his car because he couldn't get in his car because they locked it up in his own driveway. So, that's a bit of a problem there, I think, for sure. So, plus the repair bills on these are going to be pretty steep as they get older because of parts supply and limited accessibility to parts. The aftermarket may embrace it, the aftermarket may not embrace it. And if they don't, then you're held hostage by the manufacturer. So you're going to be seeing battery packs at $10,000 plus, right? But they've got pretty long warranties on most of these, which is good. But yeah, service is going to be a big issue. See, electric cars are heavier, so they wear out tires faster. They wear out suspension components faster because they don't use the brakes. The brakes you have regenerative braking. So as you're coming to a stop, your motor is slowing you down and it's charging your motor. But what happens because your brakes aren't being used, they seize up. So they're not moving at all. So you need to have brake services more often so that the brakes don't stick on or stay off or whatever. I've had Priuses come in, they can't pull away from a light. They would start to pull away and then it would pop because the brake would hang up and then it would release because they've been using regenerative braking, right? So they have unique service requirements. They're not as cheap as you think they are.
Well, let me tell you, in 18 months, when Angelo gets his car, when he needs a ride, I'll come over in my old combustion engine vehicle and pick him up and take him down to City Hall.
Yeah. Well, there's 280 million in North America internal combustion engine vehicles, right? So I don't think they're going anywhere fast. And, like you said, maybe 10 million are on the world's roads. And, if we even want to jump ahead, basically to get cobalt and lithium, you need to mine it. Well, the largest mine of cobalt is in the Congo. Well, those mines, there's 19 of them, 15 of them are owned by China. So the bottom line is when we do need all of this cobalt and lithium, guess where you have to go? It's once again, we're going to be dependent on China again. So that's sort of the big picture of this whole deal.
That is unbelievably, this is all new. I'm so glad we're having this discussion. I
And,
think,
and don't get me on child labor at those mines, those Chinese mines in the Congo. Don't get me on that. But yeah, there's reports of child labor being used to mine the cobalt.
So are there no other countries that?
Yeah, there are. Canada has, if you look at the charts, the Congo is the largest, but Canada has a somewhat decent supply. It's probably 5% of what the Congo would have. So they are the largest in the world. You can look it up. There's charts all over about it.
I will look it up. And so
this gets back to what we're doing as a country in terms of CO2 emissions and so on. That's what and the Paris Accord has driven all of this activity, I think. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are, Kirk, about the future of transportation. Is it going to be a mixed transportation? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think they need to stop, tearing up the rainforest to get minerals for these batteries because they're getting rid of a lot of trees. That's what's going on in Chile right now is they're wiping out southern Chile, going after minerals, getting rid of rainforest. And it's proven trees, which, with Milk Rough Against Development, we're fighting to save trees too. It's all about reducing global temperature, and the trees help that a lot. So, where's your balancing point where how many trees do you get rid of? And what's the benefit with the cars? Does it offset wiping out a rainforest to build some batteries? I don't think so, you see. So I see transportation. I think electric cars in balance are good. In the city, you need to get around, you can charge it. I think it's better to go hydrogen or natural gas for buses and heavier vehicles. The problem with natural gas is you need a lot of storage. That's why. But the emissions on the internal combustion engine, if you were at the auto show, Jeep had a display where they were running their Jeeps all through this course inside the auto show. And for all the years I've been involved with the auto show, we haven't been allowed to start a car if you had it inside. Okay. These guys are running this Jeep all day long for 2 weeks straight. So when I went in there and I was doing my bit for auto experts, I said to the gentleman from Stellantis, I said, how are you guys doing this? And he goes, we're monitoring it. There's no pollution. That's how good the new cars are running right now. That's how clean they are. There was no harmful pollution coming out. They did have an electric one there, but of course I chose to ride in the Hemi, but none of this was polluting at the time. And that's my guests say on the show when they're training the kids to put hoses on the cars at the at the training center. The kids will also do an analysis of the tailpipe emissions, and they'll be like, "Well, sir, that it's not polluting at all. There's nothing coming out." And Volmer's like, "Well, you still got to put the hose on it, okay?" But that's what's going on right now with transportation. That's how clean the internal combustion is. They're still emitting some carbon dioxide, but none of the harmful pollutants. So they're still creating a warming gas. But then if you go with the synthetic fuels, hydrogen, and all of that, you're capturing that gas and you're making it back into a fuel. So you're keeping it carbon neutral.
So I want to go back to the electric vehicle. Those individuals who have vehicles now and waiting for them, they're obviously installing in their homes, the plug-ins and so on and so forth. Just like a traditional vehicle, we have jerry cans. Is there opportunities down the road? Is there something that someone's going to invent that you can package up a battery of some sort if stuck on the 401 on the way to Montreal or something to get you to the gas station?
Well, great question. If you've ever watched iRacing, they're sort of like Indy cars, but with battery packs. So they're environmentally friendly racing. Apparently, very boring to watch. No sound from the internal combustion engine. So, but they never show this on TV. But if you look in the pits, they've got 20 diesel generators running, so they can charge the battery packs, so they can do the pit stop to swap the battery pack. Right. So. I don't think anything's going to come soon unless they have some diesel generators parked.
Well, but I think people have to be aware though that there is a downside to every upside, and electric vehicles, all we're hearing is the promotion of the upside of the vehicle, which is great, reduces pollution and so on. But the downside is all the things that you've talked about, Kirk. And I wonder if you got some final comments for our viewers out there about the future of electric cars.
Well, I think the costs are going to go up significantly as far as repairs and ownership. I think there will be taxes on electricity. And, I think you have to be prepared for that. There's no free ride, right? So, and maybe just plan on your car being useful for 10 years and then figure out how you're going to get rid of it. Because nobody's going to want to buy it used, by the way. So, these are all thoughts.
Well,
Just to keep in mind, Angelo, when you're waiting desperately for that vehicle that is going to take 18 months to arrive.
Yeah.
Well, I think from an education standpoint, we need more people, like Kirk, to talk to provincial and federal governments, along with the pros and the cons. I mean, we got the other side too. So I think it's important. Maybe that's something I'd like to follow up on, because this is completely interesting for me. Like I've not heard this side. I did some homework, but I didn't get to the detail that Kirk has brought in, and he's been around for 100 years. That's good for 100 years.
It feels like it.
I'd like to thank Kirk Robinson, owner of Robinson Automotive and host of Auto Experts on YourTV. And I want to thank my co-hosts, City of Burlington and Halton Region Councillor for Ward 6, Angelo Bentavania, for inviting Kirk to discuss this important issue. You can watch new episodes of The Issue Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. with repeats throughout the week. I'm Mark Carr for The Issue on YourTV, truly local.